Hey, before we start with the show, I just wanted to preview it and talk a little bit about what I'm really trying to get across to you guys. When we're talking about having an expert with student loans, or when you come to me as an expert in letters of intent, what I'm really trying to do is give you peace of mind. Peace of mind that when you've written this letter and I've helped coach you through it, we've done revisions together, that you know that it is the absolute best that you could possibly do. And in the same way, in talking to a student loan planner, you're in a position where you're talking to someone who's an absolute expert and you can be confident. Now, I would never give advice on student loans. I know that it is way more complex than I've taken the time to learn about them. And with letters of intent, until you write it, you're probably not going to realize how complex it is. But do please reach out to me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to help you one-on-one with that letter of intent. But again, what we're really working for is peace of mind. We're really trying to say, okay, have I done the very best I can? And I assure you that 95% of the students there will do better if they're having someone help them, whether it be with student loans or letter of intent. So let's get on with the show. But as you're listening to this, what I really want you to think of is, what are the things that I can do and who can I bring on my team to get that peace of mind, so that when I'm doing the residency interview or when I'm working and making that money and making those payments, I know that I've got the very best plan in place. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm on with Rob Burton, who is with Student Loan Planner. And I've talked to the guys from Student Loan Planner before. I wanted to kind of, in this residency time, when you guys are deciding, should I do a residency? Should I just get a job? What should I do? Kind of look at, how can we find an expert that really knows these things? You're going to have exit loan counseling, which is, let's just say it's not what you need, but exit loan counseling on the way out. But I wanted to bring in an expert to kind of talk about when you should seek advice, what kind of advice you should seek. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tony. Happy to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I know you've been in the industry for some 15 years. You've had tremendous experience with this. And as a pharmacist, we have a certain skill set and certain expertise. But when it comes to money, sometimes that isn't really there. And really, it's tough asking for help. So if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how, I've just found you guys are very approachable is a word I'd like to use. But tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thanks for the kind words there. So my track was a little bit different. I used to be a financial advisor, and I did securities analysis and portfolio management for a mid-size investment firm before joining up a student loan planner. And here I have advanced certifications like a CFA and a CFP, but I can tell you that before I started working with student loan planner and getting trained and how it works, I knew absolutely nothing about student loans. So even being a numbers person and spending my career helping people with money, student loans operate by a totally different set of rules than any other kind of debt. And especially for pharmacists, that decision of how much you take out versus your career choices, whether it's going into residency or going directly to a pharma job, it's hard to navigate, right? So I've been working for a student loan planner for 3 years and have done over 850 individual consults and advised on over $200 million of student loan debt. I work there, part of the time. And I also have a company that I founded called Family Budget Expert, where I help families find the extra money at the end of the month so that they can then use that to pay down debt and save and invest for the future and reach their financial goals.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's just start with the first question that any future resident is going to have, or someone that's thinking about doing an advanced residency, so we can go from PGY1 first year to PGY2. And tell me a little bit about the decision between taking a job right now that might pay $100,000, and then there's some degree of, they don't have to pay their loans back if they go into residency, but here they're going to make $45,000, maybe in a high-cost city like the East Coast, West Coast, but maybe later on they're going to have the job of their dreams and they would have their salary up. What do you what have you been able to talk to with specifically with residents, whether in medical residency or pharmacy residency, but how do they navigate this kind of, okay, so the expectation was X amount of dollars in their head as they were going through school, but then now the reality of, okay, what's it like to make $40,000-$50,000 a year and kind of get by day to day?
Yeah. I mean, I would say in general, because of the way the student loan rules work, that you can build any pharmacist and pharmacy resident can build their student loan plan around their career goals as opposed to having their student loans dictate where their career goes. And part of the reason is, there's really two different ways to pay back student loans. You can pay back based upon how much you owe. So if the average pharmacy resident graduates with 100, or average pharmacist graduates with 175,000 of debt, if they were to pay that back under, the traditional debt repayment options, and their payments to pay it off in 10 years could be around, $1,800 a month or $2,000 a month. And when you're making $40,000 to $50,000 before taxes and living in a high cost of living area, that's just not really possible to do. But student loans have the other option, which is paying based upon your income. So a pharmacist, pharmacy resident who's making, about 45,000, if they're on an income driven repayment plan, their payments could be as low as like $200 to $300 a month. And also the career prospects of being able to not only keep your payments affordable while, you're taking this temporary lower income than expected, it might also open up the door for public service loan forgiveness and having the cost of paying back the loans being much less than it would otherwise being paying it back in full under the normal circumstances.
I feel like you could take a timer as you're starting to talk to somebody, and then there just becomes this tree of questions and divisions and I don't mean to be glib about it, but it truly is like, how quickly do we get to the point where we're going to, have those questions? So I feel like everyone's looking for blanket advice, but the reality is that in your experience, does blanket advice work, or are the 850 people that you've worked with really more of a one-on-one? Can you tell me a little bit more about, they're health professionals, they're used to doing research, looking things up. Where do they start?
Yeah. In general, I mean, one of the first things we look at is debt to income. So if a pharmacist has $175,000 of debt and they're making in residency $45,000, well, that is something that's going to sway us more towards income-driven repayment, keeping the payments affordable in the meantime so that they can stay on track. But so I guess what I'm saying is debt to income is one of the primary factors in determining the best strategy. But then there's all sorts of different factors. I mean, we have a consult form that our clients fill out beforehand, and there's like 28 questions. They're not hard questions to answer, but it's not only how much you owe and how much you make, but it's, are you married? What's your profession? How do you have any kids? What are your fixed expenses? What's your rent? What's your car payment? Because ultimately the student loan plan has to be fit around, their life, and everyone lives their life a different way. So even though the primary factor might be, oh, well, you owe more in debt than what you make, well, let's use this plan then. It's not at all that way. I can tell you that I've had consults, we've done, I think over, about 120 pharmacist consults, and, all of the payment plans, there can be like a little bit of a theme, but everyone is like just different enough. And the nuances between the different repayment options are just different enough that not everyone has the same path forward.
It sounds like they could actually do this ahead of time. Like they could plan their future before they even graduated, come to you, maybe have a chat or get your advice for it. Can you tell me about maybe the before, during, and after? So maybe some of the students that you've actually talked to before they've actually graduated, someone in residency, and then someone after residency, how you might look at those a little bit differently, or maybe they are the same.
No, they are a little bit different because it depends also on how far along people are in their loan repayment plan. So like if someone hasn't graduated yet, generally they're pretty aspirational and looking forward to getting out there, and they feel like they'll be making enough money to pay back their debt in full, and maybe haven't like the amount of debt compared to what they're going to be making, it hasn't quite sunk in about that it might not be possible to pay it off in full. And, we all want what's best for our careers and look positively. Someone in residency, they may be feeling good because it might secure a good long-term, clinical or hospital type of pharmacy job, which is, has a good quality of life. So those in residency are generally feeling pretty good about their job. But if you have a pharmacist who is never went through residency, or, is 5 years into their loan repayment, there's a lot of frustration in how they've approached their loans in the past, and feeling like they don't really know what to do because the student loan rules are so confusing that, and they kind of feel like they missed out on an opportunity to take advantage of them from the get-go and getting the optimal plan from the get-go. So you kind of see like a span of optimism, both in their careers and how they approach their student loans and their career prospects, depending on where they are in the spectrum there.
Well, as I'm kind of listening to this, I'm kind of thinking of burnout, and I'm kind of thinking of almost easing suffering because there's a plan. And I remember when I actually paid off my student loans, there was no celebration. It was actually just relief. I think I went from maybe, being 5'9" to 5'10", like it just like a little weight off my shoulders. I felt so much better, but I didn't feel the elation or anything like that. Can you tell me a little bit about how the feedback you get once they have that plan in place a couple, maybe weeks later or even months or years later? What changes once they have that plan at the end of the day?
Well, clarity goes a long way. If there's any type of confusion or, uncertainty around how to handle such a big thing like student debt, that it creates anxiety. And it's kind of like if someone were to set a goal, whether it's a career goal or like a fitness goal or whatever, they don't have to run a marathon to feel elated that they did it. But if they know that they have a particular plan in place, they're going to run this many miles, that immediately gives that relief. And then obviously when student loans are gone for good, that gives them more relief, just like in your case. But I just think anytime anyone can have clarity around how to approach something, they are confident that they're taking the right approach. And it not only helps them pay back their loans in an efficient way, but it also shows that like, hey, I can fit my loan repayment strategy around my career goals. And whether I'm working part-time at a retail pharmacy and don't enjoy my life, I can keep my loan payments low. So that doesn't have to be an extra burden on my life. Or if they're, a full-fledged, hospital pharmacist where they're eligible for PSLF, they have different options to them, but understanding how it works and that student loans don't have to be a burden with a clear plan and confident that they're choosing the right path goes a really long way.
I think one thing that really stops people from getting the help has nothing to do with the cost of getting the advice and things like that. I've even heard it put as when you go to a financial planner, it's almost like going in, we'll just say underwear, but naked, and you're just bearing your soul and like, I have done these bad things, credit card debt, student loan debt. And you just, the person feels so bad that they're just even unwilling to go get the help. How have you been able to ease maybe some people's fears or allay their concerns? Because it is, to many people, just embarrassing. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, how did I spend $50,000 a year for 4 years? I lived in this little tiny apartment and all this stuff. And they just are embarrassed. There's self-shaming. I guess I just wanted to kind of introduce you guys as people that, are, I don't want to say non-threatening, but just someone that they can come to without judgment. And I guess many people are afraid of being judged. What can you tell people about coming for this help?
Number one, they're not alone. They're not alone. There's over 3 million people with six-figure student debt out there.
3 million?
3 million people with six-figure student debt.
Whoa.
And chances are a lot of, the peers and classmates are in the same boat. And this is a big problem for a lot of people, but a lot of people think that they're the only ones that have this issue, but they're not. The cost of school has been rising, especially the cost of pharmacy school, even though there's been a bunch of pharmacy schools. The growth in pharmacy schools over time has been really, really astounding. But also the cost has gone up at the same time. So talk to any pharmacist and chances are they have six-figure student debt. And so I think, number one, you're not alone. This is not something that anyone made a mistake on. And another thing is, because of the student loan repayment rules, especially the income-driven repayment option, where you can pay based upon how much you make rather than how much you owe, it ends up being more like a tax. So it'd be no different than if a pharmacist lived in, Texas where there's no state tax and moved to California where there's a, 10 to 12% state tax. It's kind of like student loans can be looked at that way too. So really, if someone takes out debt in order to get into a career that's fulfilling to them, that they feel like they enjoy, and they're willing to pay an extra percentage of their income for, a certain amount of time in order to have that career satisfaction, it's totally worth it. And then the third thing is, like I said, with the student loan rules, a plan can be built around the career aspirations, and it doesn't have to be a financial burden.
Okay. So I guess as they're kind of going through right now, is there a student loan advising season, I guess is what I'm asking. So, of the 12 months, is there a spike, maybe after graduation where they're like, oh my gosh, I have to pay this back and I don't make 2,000 a month yet? Or is there a time that would be better than waiting until, oh, look, it's November, they're due? Or, whichever it is. If they graduate residency in July, I guess it would be closer to December, January. But when is the best time for someone to get help?
Well, in general, most people, they seek help when something happens in their life. So whether it's graduation or whether it's, oh, my loan payments are about to turn on, I need to pick my repayment plan because my grace period's almost over. Oftentimes it's marriage, or it's around, tax season and wondering how they're supposed to file their taxes, and how that impacts their student loans. Like I said, marriage or kids, any type of significant event tends to trigger people to reach out to us. In general, though, the best time to get it is just before graduation, when someone knows what their next job looks like.
Okay.
Because at that point, there's a lot of stuff that can be done immediately after graduation, but before starting the job to help, save a lot of money paying back loans. But even if someone is already in residency, then there is an opportunity at any point to get on the right plan. And what a lot of people do is sometimes they'll put their loans in forbearance because they either don't know the right plan or they feel like they can't afford the payment. And in residency, that's generally a mistake that we see a lot of pharmacists make because of the affordable payments, the potential to go for public service loan forgiveness, or just to making sure that they're getting credit while their income is low and their payments are low toward, maybe the 20 or 25-year taxable loan forgiveness, like with seeing these income-driven plans all the way through. So in general, best time is just before graduation. But if there's a pharmacist who's already graduated, then there's never a better time than right now.
Okay. All right. Well, let's actually talk about that word because I can't remember it right now, but there's a synonym, which is not really a synonym for forbearance. And there's two words that get confused all the time. I can't remember what the other word is.
Deferment.
Yeah. Can you please just make a delineation between forbearance and deferment, just so the listeners understand the exact difference between the two?
Yeah. They're pretty similar. With forbearance, it's kind of a no questions asked sort of pause on the loan payments, where deferment, you kind of have to prove something that, like, why you can't make your payments. In general, though, we don't see that there's really any reason, except for in really extreme circumstances, that anyone would have to go into either deferment or forbearance, unless, of course, it's like a family emergency, or maybe they want to prioritize other things. But especially for pharmacists, anyone who's in deferment or forbearance, should try to get out of it as soon as possible and get on track for loan repayment.
So I guess what I would want to know next is, what does a consult look like? What is the whole process? In talking to Travis and talking to you guys, it just seems so streamlined now. Everything just kind of moves along. But tell me, you talked about a form a little bit. Is there an intake period, an onboarding? Is there spreadsheets to fill out? Like, how does the actual process of getting this kind of advice work? Because I know that, they might set things up and have this conversation, and then maybe a year down the line, like, oh, got married, had a kid, now things have changed. What's the process like for maybe the typical person who comes in for help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it has definitely gotten streamlined. I've been with Student Loan Planner for 3 years now, and the firm in total has done, between all four of us, consultants, Travis, or actually five, Travis, me, Megan, Lauren, and Justin. We've advised on over $1.1 billion of debt and done just about 4,500 consults. So it has gotten more streamlined. But you know, and the thing is, like, it's a big number, but there's 1.6 or 1.7 trillion of student debt. So we have, like, I keep telling Travis, you know, we have like 1.699 billion more dollars of student loan people to help. So, you know, it's an absurd number, and it's a problem for a lot of people. But the consult process looks like this. So people will book a consult where they'll book based upon their debt amount. So 0 to 200K is one threshold, 200 to 400K of debt is another threshold, and 400K plus is another threshold. You know, most pharmacists fall in either the 0 to 200 or, you know, the low 200, you know, to 400 range. And then, so they'll book, they can find their availability on our calendar without having to talk to anybody, just like, hey, pick a time. They'll be matched up with one of the consultants. And then after they do that, they'll be directed to this consult form, which takes about 15 minutes to fill out, and just ask some questions so that we can get prepared for the call. Then after that, oftentimes we'll ask for the NSLDS file, which is on studentaid.gov. If they log into studentaid.gov, there's like this nasty looking text file that has all their student loan data. And we have a tool where we can import that and interpret it and take a look at, you know, what the eligibility is, things, you know, how clean their loan portfolio is, and just seeing things we need to look out for. All that stuff on the prep end for the client the consult form takes about 15 minutes. Downloading the NSLDS file takes about 3 minutes. So call it less than 20 minutes of prep. And then the goal is, with the consult, is we want to kind of focus entirely on getting the right student loan plan in place. So the consult is an hour long, and it seems like a short amount of time, but it's actually like the perfect amount of time to understand someone's options, identify the characteristics about their lives and careers that make them unique, and then help walk them through the optimal student loan repayment strategy, and then the logistics of how to get it done. And at the end, we do also take a look at their projected net worth, which is, you know, how much they own minus how much they owe, and talk about the importance of, like, getting their savings rate high, and how even with having six-figure student debt, they can still become financially independent, even if they're not able, even if they feel like it'll never happen. So we go all through all that in an hour. And then at the end, we send a recap email where it recaps the steps. Like, if they need to do anything, we'll give them, you know, the links to, if they need to consolidate their loans, or if they need to, you know, sign up for public service loan forgiveness or change their repayment plan, we'll give them the links to go there. And then along with the spreadsheets and everything that we went over during the call, we send all that to them. And then we include 6 months of email support directly with the consultant. So, for example, I just had a consult before this call, and we went through everything, has a solid plan in place. And, but if he has any questions at all related to student loans as he's going through it, we want to make sure we're still there to help. So he can email me directly for the next 6 months, you know, that's included in the consult fee, and, you know, help make sure that they can get this plan up and running.
Awesome. Well, I do have one final question, and it's something that pharmacy also deals with as well, which is someone might wait in line for half an hour, you know, for their prescription, and behind the scenes, we might be turning a, you know, $2,000 copay into a $5 copay because we've, you know, contacted the right people, gotten the right approvals, and things like that. What's the average you have saved someone in terms of the student loans? Because I know there's those people that are, well, I just want to get a good ROI on whatever I spend with this consult. What's the usual, if there is an average of how much you've saved each person?
Yeah. So for pharmacists, our average pharmacist student loan debt actually is it like 228,000 and change is the average pharmacist we've talked to.
Okay.
And the average savings, and it's more of a complicated, we like to look at the projected net present value. So dollars out of pocket are going to be higher than this, but the average value that we can save them is that we have saved our clients is like an average of 56,000.
Good.
Yeah. And that's over the projected life of loan repayment. And so, you know, that's some real money. But in actuality, if we're looking at like dollars out of pocket, that translates to more like $80,000-ish. But it kind of depends. we look at that NPV because sometimes the different loan repayment strategies, at the end of the day, like the peace of mind itself is like,
that's priceless.
is worth it. But then if you can get the dollar savings, we've had plenty of consults where we like totally revolutionized their approach to paying back their loans and save them like a ton of money. And we've had other consults where they're on the right track and we just give them the confirmation that they're doing everything right, give them some other tips to optimize it, and they feel great. But that's just kind of the average is where we've been.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I've asked you a ton of questions. Do you have anything that you would want to make sure people know? And then, of course, your contact information I can put in the show notes. But any last things that you want to let someone know about student loans and as it relates to residency specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I would just say that there are really two divergent ways to approach paying back student loans. One is being super aggressive, and trying to pay back the loans in full over a 10-year period or shorter time frame. That's one way to approach loans. The other way is to go on an income-driven repayment plan, keeping the payment low, saving and investing aggressively alongside of that, and maximizing their net worth over time. So we want to take one or two of those approaches, either keep the loan payments super high, get rid of it quickly, or keep the payments low and invest and save aggressively on the side. Where we find people waste the most money is they decide to pay back their loans in full, but they can only commit to a 15 or 20-year plan to do that. And that gets to be really expensive. Or they commit to doing income-driven repayment, like pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, but they end up making extra payments because they think they're actually, helping keep their loan balance down. Both of those things are extremely expensive. And so we try to help people make sure that they pick one of those two approaches, but nowhere in the middle, because that's where we want to help make sure that people have as much money in their pockets as possible. So I would just say, if anyone out there is feeling like they're kind of stuck in what I call like that murky middle, where they want to pay off their loans, but they can't do it fast enough, or they have low payments, but they don't want their loan balance to grow, they might need help understanding how the loan rules work and the best repayment option for their situation. And so that they can pick one of those, feel confident and clear about the path forward and do it that way. And then as to where to find us, so our webpage is studentloanplanner.com. And if you have any questions, you can go to studentloanplanner.com/help, and that will give you all the information about our consult process and help you book a consult and all that stuff. It has all the information there. But also, I will add too that one of our goals too is to provide as much free content as possible too. So one of the things we've been doing with our blog posts is we have blog posts specific to professions. So we have dentist blog posts specific to dental issues that dentists and dental specialists have. We have blog posts, for physical therapists and obviously pharmacists. So if you just go to our blog and you scroll down, you'll see where it says pharmacist, click on pharmacist. It'll bring you up all these free blog posts related specifically to pharmacy residency, career outlook, how to, optimal ways to pay back debt. They can go there and check that out for free. And if after checking that out, if they have any questions or not sure how their plan works, then they should schedule a consult with us after that.
All right. Well, hopefully that show was helpful for you. And again, if you want to talk to me, sometimes it's just easiest to reach out to me directly. Let me know what you need help with, and I can try at TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. That's TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com.